Hello, I'm Nick. In this video I want to explain why you need to disassemble your Delphi fuel pump and how you can use my toolkit to make it relatively easy and safe to do so. This is the fuel pump that comes with the Helvinka 4-cycle fuel-injected engine that's sold by both Blackhawk and Fresh Breeze. Inside this fuel pump, in this output end here, is a fuel filter. And that fuel filter needs to be periodically cleaned. Otherwise, the pump will eventually have trouble supplying fuel for the engine and you'll start having engine trouble. And we all know that when that happens, it's going to happen in the air and not on the ground. So let's take a look-see at this pump. Now I understand that because the pump is black, you can't really see the details of the pump that well in the video, but on this end of the pump, there are 8 plastic locking tabs that hold the can cap of the pump on. To disassemble this fuel pump, you have to lift all 8 of these tabs simultaneously in order to get the cap to release and come off. And that can be very difficult to do, and without special tools you run a definite risk of breaking the locking tabs off. And if you break enough locking tabs off, you'll end up having to buy a new pump. And these pumps are expensive. So let's take a look at the toolkit itself. Laid out here on the table are all the parts that come in the toolkit. Each of these parts has a specific purpose. So let's start with this one here. This part isn't for disassembling the pump. It's actually to help you get your pump off your paramotor. These pumps come with a very nice, handy, quick to disconnect fitting for all the fuel line fittings. However, squeezing the release buttons on this quick is difficult to do. And this tool makes that much easier to do. You simply snap it on over the quick release buttons, and then you can squeeze it and easily pull the quick release fitting off the pump. Okay. So to explain each one of these parts, what they're for and how to use it, I'm going to go through and demonstrate how to use them to disassemble the fuel pump so that you can get access to the fuel filter for cleaning. Alright, before I start, I want to make a few comments though about each of these individual parts. If you look on here, you can see there's the white plastic part here, and on the end in this video there is a little plastic nut on the screw. This nut is what I call a tab lifting nut. Each of these nuts has a slot in one side. It's important that that slot slide be on the side of the nut that goes under the locking tab on the fuel pump. Otherwise the nut won't fit far enough underneath the pump locking tab to lift it up. To start disassembling your fuel pump, you want to start with this part right here. This part has 2 tab lifting nuts on it, but this is the one and only one that you need to actually remove the nut from one of the screws. So you want to remove the nut from this end here of this part. Then you take that nut and you slide it under the locking tab that's right behind the electrical connection socket for the pump. This can be a little challenging to do, but it will slide under there. I find it useful to use a screwdriver or an Allen wrench like you hear here to help position and slide this under and get it in position under the tab. It's a bit of a snug fit and it takes a little extra time, but it does go under. And as you can see right there, there's where it's under the locking tab in position. Now, once you have it in position under the locking tab, then you take this part here, with this nut unscrewed all the way down to the end of the screw so you can fit it. And then you tip it up, place the second nut under the other adjacent locking tab, position it over the existing one you have, and slide it and rotate it down in position like that, so that it's in position behind, in between the fuel cap and the electrical connector socket. Once you've done that, then you take the screw again and attach, position to make sure that nut doesn't slide back. In my case it has. There it is. Put the screw back in and carefully screw it back into the plastic lift nut. And that lift nut should screw on very easily. If it doesn't go in easily, it means you've got it cross-threaded, and you want to avoid that because that'll end up stripping the threads in the screw. Once you've got it started into the nut, then you can go ahead, tighten it up, and put pressure on that locking tab. Putting pressure on the locking tab will help hold the tool in place. And you go ahead and tighten the other one also. So right now, as you see, we have the first two in position. At this point, we go one by one, inserting extra tab lifters in position. You notice this tab lifter looks a little different than the others. This one up here has this extension on the bottom because it fits on the top of the pump where the pump is recessed slightly. So you just insert it in like that, put the other end underneath the tab on the other end of the pump. Slot it in under here. Once it's in position, go ahead and tighten the screw up to put some tension on it. That will help hold the tool in position. At this point, you simply go around the pump one by one, inserting these tab lifting tools in position. The slotted nut under the tab you want to lift, the other end under the tab on the other end of the pump. And you just keep going on around, one after the other. Straightforward, easy to do. Each time you put one of these in, it's useful to go ahead and tighten the screw a little bit to lift the tab up slightly so that that pressure will help hold the tool in position. Otherwise, they can be loose and fall out on you while you're moving around. It's really simple. Just keep going on around, one after the other. Once you've got all the tab lifters in place, it should look like this. Pretty straightforward. At this point, you can easily take your wrench, tighten the screws one by one to lift the tabs. Keep an eye on how much you've lifted the tabs. You only need to lift them the thickness of the lifting tab, so don't overlift them. The more you lift them, the more likely you are to break. As you're going around tightening these up, you may hear a slight pop from time to time from the fuel pump. And what that is the cap seal O-rings that seal the cap leave pressure that will allow the cap to slightly snap off, start to come off. So it's a pretty simple matter to just go ahead and tighten these all up one by one going around the pump. You hear that pop? That pop because the tension in the seal O-rings have caused the cap to slide off slightly, which means the locking tabs will no longer snap back down. Once the tabs are up, and you'll know they stay up because if you take one of the tools off, the tab doesn't go back. At that point, we want to move to using these two tools here. If you look at these two little tools, you'll see that one of them is shorter than the other. We want to start with the shorter one. One end of this tool has a very slight lip on it. That lip is there because it'll fit under a slight gap in the end cap. You want to position this between the two end caps like that, with the lip underneath the cap on the output end of the pump. And then you simply press it down on that piece here. When you press down on that, this tool pushes the end cap off slightly to help it remove. And then you can just move to the other side of the pump, place the cap underneath the lid, brace it against the farther end of the pump again, and press down on the pump. When you've done that on both sides with the short one of these, then you want to switch to the longer one and you want to repeat the process again. Put it in position, brace it against the other side of the pump, and press down. Brace it on, do it on both sides or multiple places around the pump so that you can make sure that it has pushed the cap up. Once you've done this, it should be possible to push the cap off. You've got it pressed, now you can be able to pull that cap off easily with just your hands. It's a pretty tight fit, but it will slowly come off. When you do pull this off, however, keep in mind that even though you've drained all the fuel out of this pump from the beginning, there's very likely still a little bit of fuel left inside this pump. So make sure that you're prepared for some spillage when you pull the cap off. And there you have it. There's the fuel filter that needs cleaned periodically. At this point, you can use whatever method you like to clean the fuel pump, the filter, and then you can put it back on and ready for another 50 hours or so of operation before you need to repeat this. Putting this back together is pretty easy. You just slide it all back in, just like come apart like this. Place it on the edge of your table or countertop and press it back on in position until all the locking tabs lock. And there you have it, your fuel pump ready to go for about another 50 hours. Thanks for watching.